I like to drink. No, let's correct that. I like to drink a lot. I'm not an alcoholic, not yet, anyways. But I like to drink so much that I have a go to taxi service number stored on speed dial, and not to mention the fact that my favorite driver's name is Frank. That's how much I love to hit the bars and clubs. This one night, I was at a club, drank quite a bit, had a filthy makeout session with a hot blonde in the bathroom, and was ready to call it a night. The blonde, God knows what her name is, pulled down her extremely short mini dress from her waist to just covering her ass. She went out of the bathroom stall first, and I took a piss afterward. I was about to walk out of the stall when a drunk idiot bumps into me, causing my phone to slip out of my back pocket and into the toilet. I picked it up right away, but there was no way I was putting that shit on my face before cleaning it. So I took it to the faucet and put even more water on it to clean off the toilet water. By the time I dried it with paper towels, the phone was useless. The plan for the night was to cut down on the drinks, seeing as I'm hitting 30 and the constant alcohol consumption is having harsher effects on my body. I was hoping to have some clean fun, but instead I ended up in a bathroom stall doing the dirty. I was too drunk to drive and I wanted to call Frank, but that wasn't going to happen with the phone fucked. So I went up to Chris, the bartender, and asked him to call me a cab, to which he replied, I have a friend who drives for a living. He used to drive limos and now he does his own thing by getting customers from us and he gives us a cut. He drives an S-Class and not some shitty yellow cabs. He charges premium, but you'll enjoy the ride a lot better. You'll be doing me a solid if you could give him a try. Well, I depend on this guy to tip me about girls who steal, the druggies, and shit like that, so I wasn't about to say no. I told Chris to give his friend a call and waited outside for the car to arrive. The fresh air helped with the nauseousness, so I walked a little back and forth from one end of the club to the other. About 5 minutes later, an S-Class stops in front of me and the driver opens the passenger side window, then asks, Are you Brian? And I answer, Yup, that's me. Alright, hop on in, sir. I sat in the back seat and gave him my address. The driver said his name is Scotty. We made some small talks and I actually liked the guy. He was kinda funny, had good taste in music, and the car didn't smell like shit. It's about 30 minutes drive to home from the club, and we were about halfway there when Scotty passes me a blunt and says, Give it a drag, I guarantee you, it's nothing like the shit you've been smoking. So I say to him, I get quality shit from my guy. I doubt this is going to blow my mind, but what the hell, I'll give it a try. I light it up, the smoke passes through my system, and I feel a buzz that I never felt before from any weed. I say to Scotty, This shit is good, man. You gotta hook me up with your guy. Then he answers, I can give you an introduction with my guy right now. He only sells to people he knows, so he won't sell to you if you go alone, even if you give him my name. What do you say? I was drunk, tired, and really didn't want to bother regardless of how good the weed was, so I say to him, Maybe next time. I'm too tired to make an extra stop tonight. Scotty counters, Listen, it's on the way. It'll add maybe 5 minutes of drive and another 5 minutes for the introduction. I won't be in town for the next couple of weeks, so this is your chance if you want to score some good weed. That got me. The fact that Scotty wasn't going to be in town for a while was enough to convince me to go for the intro. I told him to take me to the guy, and soon after, I felt sleepy, or drowsy may be a better word for it. At first, I thought, am I getting the second buzz from the weed? Maybe I was, or maybe I wasn't, but one thing's for sure, I was on a one hell of a trip. As the car continues to speed along, I see strange happenings. I see things changing. The first change I see is the people on the street disappearing. Then is followed by the buildings, and soon after, all the lights are dimming, then disappearing. It's like I just been transported from Times Square, Manhattan to some forest in Missouri in the middle of nowhere. then suddenly it dawns on me, this fucker must have put something else in the weed. If I don't jump out of this car now, I'm getting chopped up in pieces tonight. I try to move, but I can't even lift a finger. I try to stay awake, but my eyelids feel too heavy. Everything around me darkens and I lose consciousness. I don't know how long I have been out, but as I wake up, I find myself seated on a bench. My body parts are still attached in all the right places, so the bastard didn't butcher me into pieces. But for all you know, he raped me and poisoned me while I was out. I stand up and I feel a sense of relief wash over me. My asshole didn't hurt as I got up, so I'm positive he didn't stick anything up my ass. But I've got bigger things to worry about now. This town where I woke up in makes me believe I might not be alive. Maybe this is what hell looks like. Desolate, run down, hopeless. If you've ever played and watched Silent Hill games and movies, you'll understand. This fucking town would be the perfect place to film the sequel of that franchise. It reeks of death. I walk down the street, whatever the fuck street this is, and there's absolutely no one in town. If I'm still alive, how far has the asshole driven me from the city to bring me to a place like this? I don't hear birds, stray cats, or dogs, and in fact, I can't even hear any traffic noise from nearby. That's when I hear the sound. I don't know which direction it's coming from, but something's moving, and it sounds angry. I look around, and there isn't a single building that screams safe haven. I'm tempted to take refuge indoors, but at the same time, I'm apprehensive to get inside any of the rundown buildings. If something attacks me outside, I can at least run. While if the same thing happens indoor, I could easily become a sitting duck. I desperately search for signs of life, human lives, but there's none. I see cars on the street, but none of them seem like they're in working condition. Then again, I don't even know how to hotwire a car, so there's that too. Holy shit! I swear to God, I just saw a person walking from the opposite direction. It was maybe a second or two, but I saw it. Just what the hell is going on here? I gotta start moving, but I have no idea to where. Maybe I should pick a direction and just walk until I find something. It's gotta be better than staying put, I think. I start walking and that's when I hear something move as well. I stop and it stops moving. It sounds like the footsteps of someone dragging a chain. I look toward the shadow and notice a figure. I don't know what it is, but I know instinctively I don't want to go near it. So I've already established there's something here that sounds huge and angry. And now there's a figure in the shadow that's dragging around chains, following me wherever I go. I continue walking and I see distortions. It's like I'm watching TV and there's another signal that's interfering with the currently playing program. It started happening as soon as I began walking this direction. Is it a good thing or bad? I turn around and walk toward the opposite direction to see if the distortion weakens, and sure enough, it does. So now I have to choose, walk toward the distortion or walk away from it. Nothing happens in the opposite direction, which probably means I stay stuck here. I don't know what I'll find beyond the distortion, and whatever I may find could be worse than here, but I don't see any other alternative. Fuck it. I walk toward the opposite direction, and sure enough, the distortion comes back. I see more people, more distortion, cars driving by. This is it. It's got to be this way. I leg it, then suddenly I'm blinded by a bright light. When I open my eyes, I'm in the middle of a town, my own town. It's daytime. There are people walking by and there's also traffic. I'm not complaining, but how the hell did I end up here? And how the hell did night become day so fast? I went home straight after that and locked myself in my apartment, afraid to go out, afraid to do anything. I fell asleep in the middle of that and woke up at midnight. The terror I felt had receded, and now I wanted answers. My cell phone was fucked, so I sat in front of my laptop and searched for the number of the manager of the club on Skype. Raphael. His number was on the list of past calls. I dialed the number and shortly someone answers on the other line. Hello? Is this Raphael? Yep, that's me. Who am I speaking to? It's Patrick. Oh, Patrick. What's going on, dude? I need to speak to Chris. Is he around? Nah, the fucker didn't show up today. I had to assign Landry at the bar for tonight, but he ain't gonna cut it for the long term. You know Landry. I'm sure you know what I'm saying. Hey, Raphael, do you have Chris's number? I really need to speak to him tonight. I could give you his number, but he ain't answering. What's going on, man? Chris hooked me up with his friend for a ride home. This friend of him offered me a joint. I smoked it and passed out. I can't go to the cops for obvious reasons, but I need to find the fucker to find out exactly what he did to me. Holy shit, Patrick. I'll give you Chris's number, and I'll try to find out about his friend. You're right, man? If you're asking if my ass is still virgin, I think so. Anyways, man, give me a call when you hear something. Alright, man, take it easy. We ended the call, and I tried calling Chris for some 30 times with no answer. I tried again the next day, and the next, but it was clear he was avoiding me, or he might have split already. It was the same story at the club. Chris was never going to show up again. And this friend? No one knew about him. The club manager asked all the regular customers about Scotty, the driver, and no one had taken a ride from him. It was just me. I gave up the search after a month, and it's been 6 months since the incident. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about that night. I still don't know what I smoked that night. What Scotty, if that's his real name, what he did to me, how I ended up in that town, and how I came back from there. As much as I want to find answers for the questions I have, the more the time passes, the more I think maybe they are better left unanswered. Thanks for reading my story. I'm a father of 2 beautiful girls and a husband to the most loving wife in our galaxy. I'm a dentist with my own practice, and I earn a considerable income which allows me to provide generously for my family. Plainly speaking, a person in my position shouldn't have much to complain about life, and I suppose, yeah, life is really good. There is one problem, however. The problem is that the life that I'm living isn't my own. I'll try to explain it more specifically. I don't know who I am, where I came from, how old I am, and I'm not even sure that I'm a human being. Yes, I'm living in a human body, but the mind that controls this body, I don't know where it originates from. I woke up one day and I was in this body. I knew everything about the original host of the body, but I also knew those weren't my own memories that I was remembering. When it first happened, I asked myself if maybe I was having a mental lapse, perhaps a psychological disorder which makes one believe they're not themselves. It was a possibility, at least at first, but my consistent stable behavior does not point to such mental illness. There is a way in which I can differentiate my own memories and those that belong to the original host of my body. The memories I've made after taking over this body foment genuine emotional response out of me, whether they be physical or mental. I laugh reminiscent of fun times and cringe at recalling embarrassing memories. On the other hand, recollecting the memories of the original host feels like watching someone else's family movie. I understand what I'm remembering, but other than the fact that it mostly involves my now family, I've got no emotional attachment to those memories. For example, my oldest daughter, Ellie, often reminds me of an episode 2 years ago when this body still belonged to the original host, her father, David. David forgot to wear socks one day because he was running late. and this mind was simply too preoccupied with getting the kids to school on time. For some reason, Ellie found that episode comical and she still giggles when she brings it up. I laugh with her whenever she mentions it, but in reality, I don't find it funny, and that isn't because I don't find the episode amusing, but it's because I'm not the person in the memory. How can I genuinely smile with her when I've got no emotional attachment to that memory? I can't deny the fact that I still have doubts about my hypothesis of my own existence. For all you know, I think the way I think simply because I'm clinically insane. But then, how do you explain the memories? What about the distance I feel towards my parents? If I'm insane, how am I able to function so normally? I've also been noticing something increasingly disturbing lately. I see people who are like me, people who are not the person they pretend to be. I've had this ability, if you could call it that, ever since I had taken over this body. When I look at them, they look at me. They also know I'm one of them, but for the longest time, I avoided talking to them out of fear that I might truly be right about myself. The disturbing part isn't the fact that I see them, and when I say I see them, I mean I can tell them apart from normal human beings. So what disturbs me is the alarming frequency of their sightings. When I first woke up in this body, I may have seen them once or twice a week in our neighborhood, but now I see them every day, at least one each day. Their numbers are increasing. It's funny that I say them rather than us. I don't know, maybe I feel more human than one of them, or maybe David's still lingering inside my head. The point is, I like things as they are now, and I don't wish for any changes. I want to tell you about my neighbor Sam. He's your typical middle-aged man in the suburbs, father, husband, 9-to-5 job, most alone and plays with the kids over the weekend. There's nothing special about him, nothing that stands out. He's just your cookie-cutter good father figure. I'm not friends with Sam, but we do say hi to each other and sometimes make small talks about the weather and the traffic. About 3 weeks ago, I was fixing Chloe's, my younger one's bicycle in the driveway when I see Sam just staring at me. He didn't wave at me like usual, didn't say hi, and he just looked at me. I walked over to him to say hi, and I also wanted to find out if there was any problem. I was about 5 steps away from him when I noticed that distinctive glow in his eyes. Now, when I say glow, I don't mean it literally. My eyes don't glow in the dark or anything like that. It's only something that we can see. I knew it wasn't Sam anymore, and of course, the thing that's occupying Sam's body also knew what I was. I stood there 5 steps away from him and didn't say anything. Then Sam closed the distance, stood right in my face and said, "You should get your family ready." I had no idea what he was talking about, so I asked, "Get my family ready for what?" To which he answered, "It'll come to you in time, and if it doesn't, then we'll help you." As soon as Sam said those words, his daughter Abigail came out of the house and told him to come in for lunch. David turned around, smiled, and went back to being the perfect dad again. His family were still themselves, but for how long? Based on what he just said to me, I don't think I'll be letting my girls play with Abigail any longer. I couldn't sleep that night. I put the kids to bed, then my wife fell asleep, but I couldn't stop thinking about what Sam said. I don't have the slightest clue as to how all this came to be, but Sam seems to have a good grasp of what's happening and what should happen next. Who knows how or why, but there's no doubt that Sam plans to change his family into one of us. I woke up early the next morning to speak to Nora, my wife, about our neighbors. My wife quit her job when we had, or perhaps better put, David and she had their first child. She's a stay-home mom, so the kids are looked after around the clock. I lied to her that I saw Abigail, our neighbor's daughter, hit her dog with a broom and that Sam didn't do anything about it. I insinuated the possibility that our neighbors might have some issues with violent behavior, and that I didn't want our daughters playing with Abigail any longer. She thought maybe we should report them for animal abuse, but I convinced her that we wouldn't be doing any good without any solid evidence to back up our claim. She agreed. I paid close attention to Sam and his family for the next few days. I was relieved to see that Sam hadn't done anything to his family yet. Nora kept telling me she had a difficult time explaining to our older daughter, Ellie, about why she couldn't play with Abigail any longer, but I kept on insisting that it would be detriment for a young child to be surrounded by such terrible influence. A week later, it was on a Saturday, Nora and I took the kids to the museum in the morning, dropped by the bakery to pick up cannoli, the kids' favorite, then we went to a nice restaurant for dinner. It was around 9 p.m. when we got home. As I was pulling into our driveway, I saw Sam and his family wave at us on their front lawn. I knew right away they were different. Of course, my wife and kids didn't notice a thing, but I was freaking out that a whole family that had been turned lived in such close proximity. I said to Nora to wave back at them, but that she shouldn't engage them in a conversation. When she got out of the car, she half shouted, "I gotta put the kids to bed. I'll see you guys later." Nora took the kids in, and I walked over to Sam and his family. The smile on their faces vanished in an instant. Even Abigail had that empty look on her face. I felt threatened for my family's safety, and I wanted to make it clear to them that I didn't want them anywhere near my family. I looked at Sam as his family, both his wife and his daughter, looked out of it. Like I must have looked when I first took over David's body. I said, "Sam, or whoever the fuck you are, I don't want you or your family anywhere near mine." Then Sam took a couple of steps toward me and said, "I've seen ones like you, those who get attached too strongly and those who refuse to accept the coming changes." I was angry, worried, fearful. I don't know what I was feeling, but I just said what I had to say. "I don't give a fuck about anything you have to say. Just stay away from my family or I'll slaughter all yours." Sam and his family walked away without saying anything, and I just stood there thinking, what was truly happening here? Where do we come from? How do we take over people's lives? What's our purpose? I could wake up tomorrow and regain all my memories of my former self, and I still wouldn't want to change anything about my family. I had to do something. Even if I were buying a little more time for my wife and my two girls, I had to do something. Over the next 6 months, I bought a new house in the East Coast to move us as far away as possible from Portland. I sold my dental practice and our house. Then on the 8th month, we were finally able to settle down in a place free from my own kind. In my new town and nearby, I haven't seen a single one of my own. And although that's a good thing, I don't have the confidence that this will last long. I continue asking myself the question, am I imagining all this? And to tell you the truth, I really wish I were. If I'm crazy, the worst that happens is that I get locked up in a mental institution and my family will have a future. But if I'm right about everything, then how long does my family have? As I stated earlier, I haven't seen a single one of my kind in my new neighborhood in the East Coast, so I wanted to do a little test. A test to establish my sanity or insanity. I went back to my old neighborhood a week ago, and I wanted to find out if I could still see them. See them I did. I saw so many I lost count. The entire neighborhood was in a full mix between the taken over and the ones who are still themselves. The fake ones living, working, and playing alongside the ones they're preying upon. The human clueless of their precarious future. When the entire townfolks have been taken over, the speed of the process will only increase. I don't know what to do to stop this, how to keep my family safe. I sincerely wish I were crazy, but I'm afraid I'm not. The earliest memory I have of my boyhood is probably around the age of 5. I don't recall much from the ages of 5 to 7. The memories are kind of hazy and patchy. It's almost like I'm missing key pieces of a puzzle, so I can't make sense of the big picture. But I do remember I was akin to a walking time bomb. I was rowdy, unpredictable, and I didn't take shit from anybody. This story my mom told me when I was a teenager. She said I came home one day with a bloody nose, and when she asked me what had happened, I wouldn't answer. Instead, I went straight into the kitchen, grabbed the mallet, then ran outside. She ran after me and saw that I was running toward the two brothers next door who were 2 and 4 years older than me. I swung the mallet at them and the two brothers ran into their house with their tails between their legs. I was 4 years old when this happened, according to Mom. I had to tell you this short story so you could understand why I always felt confounded how a boy like that could grow up to be me. As far back as I can recall the memories that are crystal clear to me, I was extremely shy and fearful of everything. I didn't have friends in school. I avoided any size of crowds. As a matter of fact, I avoided people in general. I was especially fearful of older men, and the fear was so intense that I would refuse to be in the same room even with my dad. So how does that rowdy 5-year-old become the spineless coward that is me in the present day? That's the question I've been asking after dropping out of college. Before that, I don't even think that I had the mental capacity to question anything. My mind was filled with so much fear that I couldn't function normally. Think how hard it would be to carry a conversation with someone while another person whispers in your ear about some random gibberish at the same time. Now replace that random gibberish with things that terrify you the most, and that's my life every minute, every second of the day. It was about a year after dropping out of college without even attending 1/4 of the semester. I didn't have any means to support myself, so I lived with my parents and they were responsible for all my needs. I stayed home all day, mostly doing nothing and at most reading a few pages of magazines or books when I could concentrate for a short while. I didn't watch TV because I didn't like seeing older men on the screen. One evening, Dad came home after work and for the first time since I can remember, I went to his study to speak to him without Mom at my side. At the time, I didn't know why I feared him so much. I knew he loved me and knew he would never hurt me, but I just couldn't be in the same room with him without Mom. This day, though, I had to speak to him because Mom had always refused to speak to me in detail about the blurred memories of my boyhood. I needed to find the missing pieces of the puzzle. Dad, if you're busy, I can just go, but if you're okay for 5 minutes, I got some questions I'd like to ask. I said with my voice trembling. Dad seemed almost ecstatic that I came to speak to him alone. Of course, son, I got all the time in the world, so take your time and ask away. I want to know about the things that I can't remember. My voice was still trembling and my hands were shaking intensely. Dad felt helpless because he knew he couldn't comfort me with a hug or even a touch. I could see him pulling in his arms, painfully betraying his fatherly instinct. But you do remember, son. Some things you may have forgotten, but that's just the way it is. You grow older and new memories pile on top of the old ones. Dad did his best to avoid the topic. I couldn't help it and I just broke down. Dad, I hate my life. I hate the way I am, and it drives me crazy because I know I wasn't always like this. Something must have happened to me for me to change like this. You and Mom both love to tell me how outgoing and playful of a boy I was. Stop hiding it from me. You have to tell me the truth now. My dad wept like a little boy. What I'm about to tell you will be shocking and painful. I will tell you everything. But I need you to prepare yourself for what will deeply scar you once again. On your 7th birthday, we threw a huge party and invited dozens of friends and relatives. There were many children and adults present at the party. And among those adults were people we didn't personally know. A couple of people were friends of relatives, and there was another man who was a friend of our neighbor. As the party dragged on, some neighbors and friends left with their kids, and many of our relatives put their children to bed in your room together with you. By about 10, the party was no longer about you, but more for adults getting drunk. We were safely in our home, we had put you in bed, so we just continued to drink and talk until midnight. It was only when everyone but some of our relatives had left, when your mother came downstairs running, screaming your name. You were not in your room. We called everyone to ask about you, but no one knew anything. We called the cops, but the investigation was a mess from the start because we had too many people over, and it was extremely time-consuming for the police to interview each and every individual at the party. Many fathers on our block came to help with the search effort, but we couldn't find a trace of you. By morning, 2 friends of our relatives were cleared of suspicion, and the only person that didn't check out was the friend of our neighbor. When the police questioned the neighbor couple, who were supposedly the friends of the individual, we learned they hadn't brought a friend with them that night. We had welcomed a stranger into our home, and our politeness has gotten in the way of verifying the identity and relation of every guest present at the party. It was around 9 p.m. when the detective spearheading the investigation came to our home to update us on the progress, or more aptly put, the stagnation of the investigation. I asked him to give me an honest assessment of the situation, and it took him a good minute to give me the answer. He ended up telling me that it was nearly 24 hours after your abduction, and that the odds of finding you dead or alive didn't look good. It was 11:32 p.m., the same day when the detective called us with the news that you were found. I can't find the words to explain to you how grateful your mom and I were for the news, but as with all the good news, it came with some bad ones as well. Your abductor was driving you in his car to a far-off location, presumably to his home. He grew impatient and he sexually molested you several times on the way. I had to stop him right there. As painful as it was, I had to know what the man did to me. Stop. What did he do to me? Don't leave out anything. I have to know everything. My dad was broken at this point of recounting the story. What happened to me not only destroyed my chances of ever having a normal life, but it had done the same to my parents. I could now understand why my dad almost never smiled, and why mom became estranged with all her friends and even relatives. My dad continued to speak, his voice trembling and crying so much he could fill a bathtub with his tears. The man tried to penetrate you anally, but you were so young, so tiny, that he probably couldn't without killing you. He forced you to give him oral sex, and he made you ingest his semen. He did this several times on the way to his home, but he made a critical mistake after having traveled some 600 miles away. He stopped at a gas station to buy a pack of cigarettes, and you somehow bit through the duct tape and found the release hatch inside the trunk in complete darkness. You obviously don't have any memories of this, but you later told the police that you closed the trunk after you got out and hid behind the pickup truck that was parked in the parking lot of the gas station. You saw your abductor in the gas station convenience store, so instead of screaming for help, you were smart enough to close the trunk, making it look as though you were still trapped in there, and you waited until he left in his car. Once the man had left, you went inside the gas station convenience store and the clerk called the cops. That's how we found you. My dad kept repeating that he was sorry and that he failed me as a father. I just got up and went into my room. That was some 30 years ago. I am now an old man, and both of my parents passed away some years ago. It's regrettable to inform you that my abductor was never seen again after that, and I'm still a broken man. I still spend my days and nights cooped up in my house, and even after all these years, I still don't have a single friend. Thankfully, my parents left me a hefty inheritance, so at least I've been blessed financially. The only company I have is my sister, who visits me occasionally. She's married now and has children of her own. She can't come visit as often as she did, but she does her best to make time for me. The internet has made it easy for me to shop for everything I need, and I even chat a little on sports forums. I've come to accept that I will never have a normal life, and one might easily assume that I might advocate keeping your kids on a tighter leash, but I don't. What happened to me wasn't the fault of my parents. As tough it is to stomach the idea, it's really luck of the draw. We were unlucky that a pedophile preyed on me, and really, any child is an easy target. You don't stop driving because there's a chance of dying in a car crash. No, you drive more carefully and you get yourself a safer car. Even for me, there are some good days when I speak to a neighbor or the postman. I take one step further from my door every day, and I try to live my life the best that I can. You know, you only live once. I hope everyone who listens to my story will be more thankful of the lives they're living and learn to appreciate what they have. Let's use me as an example. I think you can categorize me as a wealthy man. I have more money than I can spend in my bank account, but my heart is devoid of any happy memories. I would give everything I own and more if that means I could have my normal childhood back. I understand money is important, but do not let materialistic things to be the objective of your lives, because when it's all said and done, the memories you cherish are worth more than all the treasures in the world. Finally, I want to thank you, Dennis, aka Mr. Creepy Master, for reading and replying to all the emails I've been sending you for the last 2 months. I feel that we've grown to be good friends, and it feels good to have someone else to speak to other than my sister. Keep doing what you're doing, and I hope you never stop. You would think someone who went through the things that I have would stay away from scary stories, but to me, these stories are actually therapeutic. It's no different than people with acrophobia, phobia of heights that is, wanting to challenge themselves by climbing up higher and higher. I hope you will never stop replying to your subscribers, even when you have 1,000,000 of them. Thanks again. Alright, that is it for this video, and I would first like to thank Mr. K for submitting his story. I've made this video with heavy heart and had to think for several days on whether or not I should actually publish it. I published it, of course, and I did that because that is what Mr. K wanted. The first time I received an email from Mr. K, he simply said he was a fan of my work, so I thought it was in the vein of the usual emails that I get from time to time, and I had no idea of his past. We've been exchanging several emails over the course of 3 months, and yeah, I do think we've become good friends. I hope you sharing your story with our small community somehow helps you in some capacity, and hopefully it'll also help the viewers realize how lucky we are able to live a very mundane and yet ordinary lives. Keep in touch, Mr. K. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. And now let's talk about the first story. It feels kind of glitch in the Matrix type of experience, but at the same time, it may be demonic. Then again though, it could also be the reaction of what you had smoked. I'll give you this much, I've never personally seen anyone trip out like that, so that kinda gives more weight that you might have actually experienced the glitch for real. Regardless of all the possibilities, we are in agreement of one thing though. I think you may be extremely lucky that you are still among us, the living, and you should probably stop trying to figure out what happened to you. I believe if you do find both the bartender and the driver, the outcome may not be what you expect to happen. After all, the last time you were involved with them, you were left pretty much helpless. And with that, thank you, Patrick, for sending in your story, and good luck with everything. Finally, let's discuss the second story. While reading this story, I was reminded how the suggestions in our minds could make imaginary things manifest in the real world. But the key thing being, it only applies to the person who has those suggestions. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that it was all imaginations, but I am stressing the fact that what's real to you doesn't necessarily mean that it's real to all of us. What you have experienced and are experiencing now could be the result of the nature of our susceptible minds. I say this carefully because we spoke over Skype and you seem like a completely sane person. In fact, sane, well-spoken, and intelligent individual. But I don't think you've got anything to lose by seeing a psychologist, for example, getting a professional opinion, and see if that opens a new door to a different possibility. I'm saying this because it may be the only way to figure out what is real and what isn't. From the conversation that we had, I came out with the impression that you believed everything you said, but you were also aware that there were other possible explanations for the things you've experienced. I just believe it's important for you and your family for you to exhaust all options in getting to the bottom of this. If you are deemed completely normal even after that, then I'll definitely be very scared by then. Thank you for the story, Mr. Anonymous, and good luck. As for the rest of you, don't forget to like the video if you enjoy my content. I'm tempted to give you another 10-minute speech, but I won't. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.